Malcolm did exactly what everyone around you has been saying is the smart move. Buy as soon as you can. Stop throwing money away on rent. Build equity. But before you do anything, let's actually run the numbers, because I want to make sure we're working with the same situation. You and Malcolm are both mid-30s, both single, both pulling around $80,000 a year. Both had about $80,000 saved up going into this. Malcolm put his into that house. You still have yours. Sound right? Here's what we're going to do today. I'm going to walk you through exactly what happens to both of you over the next 3 years, 7 years, and 15 years. Every cost, every return, nothing left out. By the end of this, you'll know exactly what conditions make buying the right call and what conditions make renting the smarter move. Your answer and Malcolm's might be different. That's the whole point. All right, let's run the math. Here's where almost every rent versus buy conversation goes wrong before it even starts. Most people compare two numbers: Malcolm's monthly mortgage payment versus your rent. Malcolm's payment on a $300,000 loan at 6.25% comes out to $1,847 a month. Your rent? $2,450. Mortgage looks cheaper, decision made. But that's the wrong comparison. A mortgage payment is two things at once. Part of it is principal, money moving from your bank account into your equity stake. That part isn't gone. The other part is interest, and that goes straight to the bank every single month and never comes back. The real question is, how much money leaves Malcolm's household permanently each month compared to how much leaves yours? And when you add it all up, it is not $1,847. Malcolm is paying around $1,563 in interest in year one. Property tax in Anaheim adds another $331. His HOA fees and homeowner's insurance run another $400 a month, and this is the number that almost nobody includes when they do the quick calculator comparison online. Maintenance on a $375,000 home at the current national average runs about $656. And then there's the opportunity cost of having $75,000 locked into real estate instead of invested at 7% in an index fund, which runs $438 a month. Add it all up. Malcolm is spending about $3,390 a month on costs that never come back to him. You're spending $2,450. The gap right now is roughly $1,220 every month. That's what you can invest, while Malcolm cannot. One more thing before we get to the comparison. Malcolm had $80,000 saved, same as you. But buying that house didn't just cost him $75,000. In California, closing costs, escrow, title, and lender fees run roughly 2.5% to 3% of the purchase price on top of the down payment. On a $375,000 home, that's around $9,400 to $11,250 extra. And under the current rules, post the 2024 NAR settlement, depending on how the buyer's agent commission gets handled, that number can go higher. Malcolm needed somewhere between $84,000 and $86,000 total. He had $80,000. His parents covered the gap. You kept your full $80,000. That matters more than you might think. Let's see why. All right, here are the assumptions we're running. Malcolm's home appreciates at 4% per year, which is a realistic current estimate for the Anaheim market over a standard holding period. Your investments go into a low-cost S&P 500 index fund at 7% per year, the 30-year nominal average. And your rent increases 3% per year, which is consistent with where the Anaheim rental market has been trending. Day one, you invest your full $80,000. Every month after that, you invest the gap between what Malcolm spends on ownership and what you pay in rent. Right now, that's $1,220 a month. Here's the thing, though. That gap doesn't stay the same. Your rent goes up 3% every year. Malcolm's ownership costs are largely fixed, which means by year 7, your monthly gap has dropped to about $659. By year 13, it's down to $74. And sometime in year 14, your rent actually crosses over Malcolm's total ownership cost. At that point, you're the one spending more on housing every month. We're going to track that crossover, because it changes the story significantly. One more number that shapes everything. When Malcolm eventually sells in California, the transaction costs are much higher than most people expect. Under the current market structure, sellers typically pay around 5% in total agent commissions plus roughly 2.73% in non-commission closing costs. That's about 7.73% of the sale price walking out the door. On a $375,000 home starting value, that number grows meaningfully over time. 3 checkpoints. Let's go. 3 years in. Malcolm's home has appreciated 4% annually. It's now worth about $421,800. His remaining mortgage balance is around $288,750. Net equity on paper, roughly $133,000. But here's the part that doesn't show up on paper. Malcolm has essentially zero liquid savings. Everything went into the house and the closing costs. There's no cushion for a job change, a medical bill, or a market opportunity. If he needed to sell today, the transaction costs in California run about 7.73%. On a home now worth $421,800, that's roughly $32,600 walking out the door, which means his actual take-home comes out to about $100,400. Where are you at year 3? Your $80,000 invested at 7% has grown to about $98,000. Your monthly GAAP contributions over 36 months, starting at $1,220 and declining slightly as your rent goes up, have added roughly $47,500. Total portfolio, about $145,500. Fully liquid, every dollar accessible tomorrow. The score at year 3. If Malcolm holds, he has $133,000 versus your $145,500. You're ahead by about $12,500. If Malcolm needs to sell, he walks away with $100,400 versus your $145,500. You're ahead by $45,000. And there's the number that doesn't fit in either column. You got a job offer in Seattle at year 2. You gave 60 days notice and took it. Your entire $145,500 traveled with you. Malcolm got the same offer. Selling at year 2 would have cost him $15,000 in transaction fees on a home that had barely appreciated. He passed. At year 3, your financial advantage is real but moderate. Your flexibility advantage is not moderate at all. 7 years in. Malcolm's home is now worth about $493,400. His mortgage balance is around $270,100. Net equity, $223,300. If he sells, 7.73% in transaction costs on $493,400 is $38,100. Net take-home, about $185,200. Where are you at year 7? Your monthly gap has been shrinking as your rent climbs toward Malcolm's cost. By year 7, your monthly investment has dropped from $1,220 down to about $659 a month. But 7 years of compounding on your initial $80,000 and 7 years of monthly contributions have built the portfolio to about $240,800. At year 7, the story splits 2 ways. Scenario 1, nobody moves. Malcolm's equity is $223,300. Your portfolio is $240,800. You're ahead by $17,500. Scenario 2, Malcolm sells. The house costs him $38,100 just to exit. He nets $185,200. You're still at $240,800. That's a $55,600 difference, and Malcolm hasn't even packed a box yet. Year 7 is interesting. On a pure hold basis, you're still clearly ahead. But look at what's happened since year 3. At year 3, your hold advantage was $12,500. At year 7, it's $17,500. It's grown, but not as fast as you might expect, because your monthly contributions have been declining every single year as your rent creeps upward. The compounding engine is still running, but it's running on less fuel each year. And here's something worth watching. Malcolm's mortgage payment never changed. Your rent went from $2,450 to over $3,000 a month. The fixed payment is starting to look different now than it did in year one. 15 years in, and this is where the story gets genuinely interesting. Malcolm's home is now worth about $675,300. His mortgage balance is $215,300. Net equity, $460,000. If he sells, 7.73% in transaction costs on $675,300 is $52,200. Net take-home, about $407,800. Where are you at year 15? Here's what happened. In year 14, your rent crossed $3,700 a month. For the first time in 14 years, you were paying more for housing than Malcolm. Not by a lot, about $34 a month in year 14, $144 a month in year 15. But the tables had turned. After 13 years of having more money available to invest every month, you suddenly had less. Your portfolio still compounded on everything you'd built, but you weren't adding to it in those last 2 years. By year 15, your portfolio sits at about $458,000. So let's put the two scenarios side by side. If neither of you sells, Malcolm is at $460,000. You're at $458,000. Malcolm is ahead by $2,000 after 15 years. Buying a home in Anaheim and holding it produced a result that is, financially speaking, essentially identical to renting and investing the monthly gap. Now change one variable, Malcolm sells. You stay liquid. His $460,000 becomes $407,800 after transaction costs. Your $458,000 stays exactly where it is. Suddenly, you're ahead by $50,200. Let that sit for a second. If Malcolm holds for 15 years and never sells, he has a $2,000 edge over you. That's it. 15 years of zero liquidity, zero flexibility, 2 major repairs he didn't fully budget for, 1 career opportunity he passed on at year 4, and the result is a $2,000 edge over someone who rented and invested, the difference. But if he ever needs to sell, he's $50,000 behind you because of California's transaction cost structure, and his $460,000 is locked inside a single illiquid asset in one zip code. Your $458,000 is a diversified portfolio you can access in 48 hours. Now let me be direct about something. This is the Anaheim math at these specific numbers. Different city, different appreciation rate, different HOA, different rent level, and the outcome shifts. In some markets, buying wins clearly and early. In Anaheim, at $375,000 today, renting and investing gets you to almost exactly the same place over 15 years, with more flexibility along the way. That's not a slam dunk for either side. It's a genuine tie with very different non-financial trade-offs. All right, David, here's how to apply everything we just ran to your actual decision. There are 5 things you need to check before you pull the trigger on any home purchase. Let's go through them. First, check your real entry cost. The down payment is just the starting point. In California, closing costs and fees add another 2.5% to 3% on top. On a $375,000 home, plan on needing $95,000 to $100,000 in liquid savings before you buy. That covers your down payment, closing costs, and a 6-month buffer. Anything less, and you're entering a physical asset with no cushion. Second, check the home's age. The 2.1% maintenance figure is a national average for newer stock. For homes over 15 years old, run your analysis at 3% and watch how fast that monthly gap moves. Third, be honest about your timeline. California's total transaction cost on exit runs about 7.73%. To break even on just those costs at 4% appreciation, you need to hold the property for 5 to 6 years minimum. If there's a realistic chance you relocate inside that window, the math shifts against buying. Fourth, price your flexibility. In the simulation, Malcolm passed on a job opportunity at year 4. That decision had a real financial value that never once showed up on his equity statement. Career mobility in California costs money. Factor that in. Fifth, be honest about your investment discipline. The David scenario required investing that monthly gap every single month for 15 years straight. Not occasionally. Every month. If you haven't done that consistently before, adjust your expected outcome accordingly. Now here's the decision trigger. Buy when your liquid savings comfortably cover the down payment, closing costs, and a 6-month reserve. When your true ownership cost lands within $300 of comparable rent. And when you have a genuine expectation of staying at least 6 to 7 years. Until those conditions are met, keep renting. Put every dollar of the monthly gap into investments and build toward a position where buying doesn't leave you exposed from day one. Here's how David and Malcolm's story actually ends. Not at year 3 when everyone was watching. Year 15, Malcolm stayed in Anaheim, got promoted twice. His mortgage payment never changed. By year 15, his home was worth $675,000 and his equity was $460,000. He's genuinely proud of it. He should be. There's a job he passed on at year 4. Selling at year 4 would have cost him around $20,000 in transaction friction. He did the math and said no. He still thinks about it sometimes. David kept renting, moved once when his salary went up, invested $80,000 from day one, put in the monthly gap every month for 13 years, and kept compounding even when the contribution stopped in years 14 and 15 when his rent finally crossed Malcolm's cost. By year 15, his portfolio was $458,000. At year 15, Malcolm had $460,000 in equity. David had $458,000 in his portfolio. $2,000 separated them after 15 years. But Malcolm's $460,000 is in a house he can't spend without moving. David's $458,000 is in an account he can access in 48 hours. Neither of them made a mistake. Malcolm made the right call for someone willing to stay in one place for 15 years and comfortable with zero liquidity at the start. David made the right call for someone who needed flexibility, actually invested the monthly gap, and wasn't ready to commit to one city for 15 years. The difference between them was never about which choice was smarter in the abstract. It was about which choice fit the actual life each of them was going to live. You now know the math on both sides. The question isn't rent or buy. It's, what does your next 15 years actually look like? If this math changed how you're thinking, hit like. Someone you know is sitting on this exact decision right now, and that's how they find it. And if you want to hear what David runs into next, subscribe.